So if you've not been with us on the rest of the recording, it is the 18th. We're discussing this Who Wants to Be a Millionaire question. So let's look at what the audience says. I'm going to have to move my... Maybe I need to go further. Or maybe I need to let it play. There's the poll result. 50% of the audience said answer A. That's wrong. 30% said the right answer of 25. Who knows how many of those were just guessing? If everybody here just guessed, every answer would get 25% if we had a standard distribution of guesses. So literally these people could have all been guessing. And then 19% and 1%. Most people figured out it wasn't D, but it's B. He ends up trusting the audience, and he loses based off not knowing his perfect squares, which is not that complicated of a thing to learn, but you just have to remember it and be able to apply it. So as we get into area today, that's the difference between area and circumference, is we start to have to square values, which is multiplying by itself. Did we make it all the way to the back page?
Yeah. We're right there.
So, if I double the radius, what effect does that have on the circumference? Now, am I given the radius right here? No, I'm given the circumference. Did anyone work ahead on their homework? You saw that I posted a few and you tried to work ahead? Okay. So, if you start looking at the next homework, and especially if you go look at 11.4, which I don't even think I've made live yet. That'll be live today. We can solve any information about a circle given only one piece of information. Because if I know that my circumference is 6.28, what else do I know about my circumference? Monica?
I know that 6.28 is equal to the radius times 2 and the diameter.
So, yeah, be careful. So what formula are you trying to get back to?
The circumference is equal to 2 pi r or pi d.
Yeah, so the one that we had to start was pi times the diameter. But this really will still leave me with one more step to get to radius. So instead of using that formula, the other formula we had for circumference yesterday was 2 times pi times radius, because this 2 and this radius, what is 2 times the radius?
Diameter.
The diameter. So there is our diameter. We just have two formulas because we can swap out 2 times the radius or diameter. Doesn't matter which. So, to then isolate the r, what do we need to get rid of? Ozzy?
The diameter? No, pi.
Here, to isolate the r, we got to get rid of pi and the 2. So we divide by 2 pi to get rid of that 2 pi. Over here, we divide by 2 pi. Pi is approximately 3.14. 2 pi is approximately 6.28. So this comes out to have a circumference of 1 unit. So we want to discuss, what effect does doubling the radius have? Well, this is wrong. I labeled that incorrect. What should this be? It's not C equals. It's R equals. I need to delete that page. If you wrote down C equals, sorry for blindly trusting me. Always make sure you're thinking about what we're doing, not just blindly trusting. So this is R equals 1. So then, solve out the work. What happens when we double the radius? Well, my radius is going to become 2. So then be careful, my diameter becomes 4. So now, if r equals 2 slash, that would mean my diameter equals 4. Whichever you want to use, you can either use radius as 2 or diameter as 4. It doesn't make a difference. So I can now say the circumference, and this will be for a circle B.
That doesn't make sense. If r is 2, then... Alright, got it.
Could you have processed through that without interrupting class?
Yeah.
Can you try to do that next time? Like, you can ask a question, but think it through before you interrupt class. So now my circumference, I can use formula pi times d, because I know the diameter, which will just be 4 times pi. And 4 pi, if we approximate pi as 3.14, now what if we did this again? And you don't have to write this next one down, but what if now, so this is not for the example, what if r was 4, which would mean that the diameter is 8. When I double my radius, if this circumference will now become 8 pi compared to 4 pi, if I double my radius, what's happening to the circumference?
It's doubled.
It does the exact same thing. So, whatever multiplication or division would happen to your radius or circumference, the same thing happens to the other. Now, why do we bring this up? Area operates differently than this. So, circumference follows the radius. If radius doubles, circumference doubles. If radius quadruples, circumference quadruples.
Would that work with the diameter?
Yeah, because radius and diameter are the same manipulation. Because look, if the radius doubled, my diameter doubled. So they're doing the same thing. And my circumference would double. Everything, radius, diameter, and circumference all operate together if we're multiplying or dividing. Now, area is different though, so be careful. So, what is the length of the tire track? So like how far one rotation could go if this wheel is 20 inches across. So it's a standard size bike tire. So if that's 20 inches across, then Andrew, what else do I know about that tire?
You know that
If it's
for
20,
pi, no, that it's
what is that 20 inches then?
that's its
If it's all the way across, which one is that?
not the radii, but the diameter.
That will be our diameter. So we see up here, the diameter is 20. What else can I figure out if the diameter is 20? Sean?
Radius is half of that.
The radius is half of that, or 10. But if I'm looking for circumference, I don't need the radius if I have the diameter. Because circumference, what's my formula?
3.14 times 20.
Whitney, what's my formula? For circumference. If you don't remember, look back on the front.
Oh. Is that radius times diameter?
No, it's either pi times diameter or pi times 2r, because 2r is your diameter. So, here's a memory trick. If you want to be able to remember circumference real easy, we're talking about a circle, right? And circumference is distance around. Think about this as a pi, right? Because we talk about pi a lot with circles. The crust is pi dough. The crust is pie dough. When you make a pie, the crust starts out as dough. Crust is pie dough.
Do you have one of those shirts that says like I love pie, but it's got the little
I mean, I have a shirt that is just pie, but it's nothing weird. So that can really help you remember circumference. Because if you just remember crust is pie dough, you'll never forget your circumference formula. And then you can remember
Good morning. Ella Grindle, please come to
that
the
I can
office.
replace
Ella
D
Grindle to the office,
with
please.
2R
Thank you.
if I want to. So I have diameter here, so I can use that. And it tells me use 3.14 for pi. So I exchange out my pi for 3.14. I I multiply that by my diameter of 20. Ellie?
62.8.
62.8.
62.8 inches.
Yep. So in one rotation, that wheel would go 62.8. Expect that on the test, there's a question that asks you to do exactly that process, but it asks you about multiple rotations. So like if the wheel turns twice or 3 times or 4, like it asks you about if it turns multiple times, how far did you go? Any questions on that problem? I don't know why that orientation is so off. So try the got it on your own. It gives you a radius to start that we then have to use. So be careful. Dom, if this gives you the radius, what's the first thing that you're actually doing?
Well, I was thinking the radius is just half of the diameter.
So you use this to find,
Diameter.
which is,
I did 6.4 times 2.
yeah, it's double your radius. So we get 6.8 meters for our diameter. Sam, once I know my diameter, which actually we didn't have to do that, but this is up to you. There's many right ways to solve this. If we know our diameter, we can use pi d. Otherwise, we could use 2 pi r. Which formula did you use, Sam?
I use C equals pi times d.
So my circumference is pi times diameter, and they tell me use 3.14 for pi. So I replace my pi with 3.14. I replace diameter with 6.8. When we multiply these together, we get, go ahead, Dom.
21.352. This is round to the nearest tenth of a meter.
So the 3.5 tells this
To round up.
to round to a 4, so it would actually be 21.4 meters. Remember, m is meters, mi is miles. Any questions, comments, concerns on these? So, really, circumference is only one formula, but you can write it 2 different ways. Because diameter, I can switch out for 2 times the radius if I want to. So all you have to remember is the relationship between radius and diameter, and then the one circumference formula. So right now, we've only really got 2 formulas. Diameter is 2 times your radius, and circumference is pi times your diameter. Using those, I can make more formulas. Do you have a question, Jeremiah? I have your test graders. Make sure I give those back to you. So, the circumference for each coin is given. We want to find the diameter. Now wait, I'm going to have to do this 5 times. Is there a way that we can use our circumference formula to create a formula for the diameter? Could we isolate diameter in this formula? Colin, what do you think? If I look at our formula that we're given, is there a way that we can get d by itself?
Do like C.
What would I need to get rid of to get d by itself?
You have to get rid of the pi.
The pi, right? That's what's attached to it. How's it attached?
It's pi is basically 3.14, and it's the distance of this.
So, you're thinking too hard. Look right here. How's pi attached with the diameter? What math holds them together?
The circumference.
No, what math is holding these 2 numbers together? Multiplication. How do I undo that?
Pi minus
What's the opposite of multiplication?
division.
Division.
Pi.
We want to divide by pi which gives me a new formula, just like we were just talking about. Once you have a formula, you can derive whatever other formulas you want. Now I saw a couple eye rolls. This is going to save us time. Yeah, we just made a new formula. Oh my gosh, it's another formula to remember. You don't have to remember this. We just made this formula. So if we just made it right here, you don't need to remember it. You can make it anytime you want.
That's cool.
I can also make another really cool formula over here. If I want to get pi by itself, I could just divide by d on both sides, and I could find out that pi is circumference divided by diameter. And we talked about that yesterday with how I could make pi, aside from like crust and berries and things. I can do this division, and it will always spit out pi, circumference divided by diameter. But what we want to do is solve for the diameter. So what we want to do is take your circumference, 73.04, divide it by pi, and figure out what is the diameter. So for each of these, you're just going to plug it in and divide by pi. And that's all you got to do. So in our first coin, what'd you get, Elaine?
23.26.
23.26. And that'd be millimeters. Make sure that your labels are on. Come on, so we'll hop back to you. What's our second one?
24.3.
And do we think we could do the rest of these? Here's the big thing. Understand that given any formula, we can isolate whatever we want. So when they ask you find diameter, we easily made a formula based off a formula we already knew to make our life easier. So the rest of these, circumference divided by pi, divided by pi, divided by pi. Now, the only other thing to talk about is another, whoa.
That is awesome.
Oh, do that again. That looks so cool.
It was about to turn off Smart Ink, which is not what I want. I need Smart Ink. Otherwise, I can't really teach. The other thing to talk about, another approximation for pi. Everyone holding a calculator right now, type in 22 divided by 7. Hit enter. Hold on. 22.7, or divided by 7. You just said it's...
3.1428. Oh, it's a 2.57.
So hold, chill. So real pi, if we actually look at the actual decimal places, starts with this, 3.1415. This goes 3.1428. So let's think about 1.5 or 3.14 with nothing after it, right? Because if we just use 3.14, then there's zeros here. How far away is 3.1415 from the 28?
100.
How far is 15 away from 28?
Like,
13, right? So this approximation is 0.001. That's 13 ten-thousandths away from accurate. If I use the 3.14 approximation, how far away would 00 be from 28?
28.
It'd be 28. So which one's closer?
13.
This fraction approximation is closer to actual pi than 3.14 is. Now, of course, you could go more decimal places, and instead of using 3.14, you could use 3.1415, and then you're more accurate, but that 22 over 7 is the closest we can get with small numbers. You have to use really giant numbers to get any closer to actual pi. Sorry, I just thought about this backwards. This was our approximation. Our actual, I need to correct this before we move on, 3.14159. So where I meant to talk about this, my bad, I'm all flustered. because I'm waiting for, I don't know if Mr. Shirt's ever actually going to come back. I'm curious what he's dealing with. So my actual is 3.14159. My estimate is 3.14 zeros. And then my fraction is 3.1428. So my estimate of 3.14 is 15 10,000ths off. Sorry, it's not 20. You don't have to write this down. We're just kind of discussing. So this is only 15 thousandths. So the fraction is closer, is what I'm trying to get across. The fraction approximation is better, but I'm not saying you have to use that. On my tests, use whichever you prefer. You can use 3.14. You can use actual pi. There's a button on your calculator
No.
right over there.
It just equals pi. It
I know.
doesn't-
It equals the whole, like, yeah. Hit pi and hit enter.
It just says pi.
Does it?
Yeah.
Does it say 3.14159?
No, it just
Okay.
says pi.
My calculator
Then,
says
so it has the symbol.
Yeah.
Your calculator has the number of pi out to like a bunch of decimal places. It can't fit that number on the screen. So it doesn't. Other calculators that don't like think as hard, like if I grab this older clunky calculator, if I hit pi and I hit enter, it says 3.141592654. It has pi in the calculator. So when you use the pi button, it has it out to like 100 decimal places or something. So it's very accurate. Use the fraction, use 3.14, use the pi button. I don't care. On your homework, it will tell you, just so you get used to what do I use for pi. Most of the time we use 3.14. Most of the time we just use 3.14. Yeah, Andrew? Huh?
That button will convert it.
Oh yeah, fraction decimal.
Oh, whoa. Wait, what?
All right, flip to our next page of notes. So, I'm not asking you to be very artsy here, but if we had these shapes on a grid, let's try to approximate or count as close to possible what the area, so the space inside of it, that these shapes have. Okay, so my square, this is easy. What would be the area of our square here? 4
Feet.
Well, so yeah, these are feet, so the distance right here is 1 foot. But when I have feet times feet, I would get 4
Feet squared.
feet squared. So now, when we look at the triangle, is there anything crafty that we could do to make this easier to think about? Dom, I think you
I'm
had
not
it
sure how
up first.
crafty this is, but just observing it, I saw that the bottom 2 squares and the top 2 look like they could fit together.
This portion just so happens to fit right there.
Yeah, we did this in 6th grade. You just like, well, you could do it like as a square and then you divide it by it.
Yeah, so what we really see is we can actually complete the boxes, and my area there would turn into
2 feet squared.
2 feet squared. Now my circle.
This is the hard.
Yeah, this is the hard one. Let's choose another color.
Yes.
No, try and
Your area here. What's your guess? Who asked? Can I guess? Jeremiah, what's your guess?
3 feet because the other one was 4 and the other one was 2 and that one maybe it'll be 3.
Ooh, that's pretty good deductive reasoning. We've got a 2 and a 4. That's less than 4 because we know it doesn't fill in all 4 boxes. It's bigger than 2 because it fills in more than 2. That's a pretty good guess.
Yeah, and I
Andrew?
I can add to that the little corners that it's not filling probably could all add up to 1 so that it can go down to 3.
You're real close. The area of that circle
Is it
It's
pi?
pi.
is pi.
It's pi.
The area of, we'll show you in just a second. Just go ahead and write it down so you have it. the area of that circle is just pi. Now, I want to blow your mind.
Okay.
Circles are just rectangles.
Yes.
So hang on. Circles are just rectangles. So if you are playing along at home, I'm gonna have to pause the video and yank the microphone. So you should look up this video, area of a circle, how to get the formula. It's worth watching, but I'm